Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for Friday, June 26th, 2026. Your reader for this hour is Chet Walczyk. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. We'll kick it off with a weekend edition cover section and their feature story. Affordability and economic uncertainty deepen a crisis. Purchasing a home now is even harder. Housing is fundamental. We all need a roof over our heads. We all need someplace to raise our families, cook our meals, and escape from the world. So it's a cruel state of affairs that we seem to be getting it so wrong. That's the idea at the heart of the State of the Nation's Housing, a report produced every year by Harvard University's Joint Center for Housing Studies. The 2026 edition, released June 17th, is sobering. Persistent affordability challenges and rising economic uncertainty are hurting housing markets, the report says bluntly. Weakening labor markets and plummeting immigration have dampened household growth and mobility. Sales of existing homes sit at 3-decade lows, and inventories are rising in the face of high home buying costs. What does that mean in reality? Well, here's some numbers for you. Only 1.1 million new households were formed in 2025, a number roughly in line with the depths of the Great Recession over a decade ago, as student debt, a weaker job market, and anemic consumer sentiment made Americans wary of striking out on their own. Similarly, only 11.2% of Americans relocated in 2024, also an all-time low. And as of 2024, 20.7 million homeowner households spent more than 30% of their income on housing expenses. 9.6 million spent more than 50%. And renters may have it worse. Roughly half of all households that rent, or 22.7 million, were cost-burdened as of 2024, including 12.1 million that were severely burdened. Beneath the bullet points, the story of a housing market deeply undersupplied and overcrowded resonates. In 2024, 11 million American households had extremely low incomes, which means they earned up to 30% of the area median. But there were only 3.8 million rental units that were both affordable and available, meeting the needs of only 35% of those households. Among American renters of all income levels, 49% are moderately cost-burdened, which means they spent 30% or more of their income on housing, while a whopping 26% spent at least half their income on housing costs. Both measures are up sharply since 2019. To get housing, it takes more, and Americans often wind up with less. As the report explains, owner-occupied homes are a median of 42 years old, while homes occupied by renters are 43. That's important because the older a home gets, the more expensive it is to maintain and improve. As of 2023, the report says owners living in homes built before 1940 spent an average of $6,700 per year on improvements and repairs, about 50% more than those occupying homes built in 2010 or later. Housing is out of reach for people across America, renters and owners, young and old, from coast to coast and in between, the report makes clear. Renters have it hardest in Florida and Nevada, while California and Hawaii are among the priciest places to own. Still, the crisis is hardest for America's most vulnerable. The most serious and intractable housing shortage involves units affordable to households with low and moderate incomes, the report notes. In 2024, 11 million households with extremely low income competed for just 3.8 million affordable and available rental units. People of color are also disproportionately impacted. Among homeowner households headed by a black person, 32% are cost burden, and among those headed by someone of Hispanic heritage, 29% are cost burden. That compares to 22% of households headed by white owners. And another financial story. Tipping slips despite pressure to leave more. The 20% standard may not be the norm anymore. Temi Adoye feels she is a good tipper at food establishments, but has recently wondered whether others are tipping as much as she does. Adoye, a 28-year-old content creator and comedian in New York City who also works in marketing, posted a TikTok video asking if people still tip 20% or more as she does. The answer? Maybe not. According to the latest report from Toast, which has tracked tipping behaviors on its app for its restaurant partners since 2022, the average tip at restaurants in the United States is under 20%. Toast is a digital platform built for restaurants. The overall average U.S. restaurant tip across all restaurant types held steady at 18.8% in the first quarter of 2026. Adoye posted, "My whole life, I have been tipping 20%. I assumed that was like the generous average, and most of my friends tip similarly. But recently, whenever I go to restaurants and it is like the automatic tip thing, it'll start at 20 and like go up to 25. And sometimes we're even like skipping 20 and going straight to 22. Now the way that my mind works, 22 and above is for like excellent service. And I rarely tip under 20 unless they do something crazy. So my question is 20% still appropriate?" Adoye asks. Adoye said she made the TikTok video in April because I was honestly curious about what's accepted about tipping, and she was slightly taken aback by the higher suggested tip prompts, she told USA Today. "I am not trying to short people, and I feel like it's really frustrating when other people do," Adoye said. Adoye's TikTok followers gave a range of percentages in their answers. Most said they similarly tipped 20%. One woman said she tipped 25 to 30%, but noted it may be because she's in Arkansas, which makes that a lot easier to do than if I lived in a large and more expensive city. Adoye said she was shocked that some people said they were tipping 15 to 18%, and some people also said they weren't tipping at all. But they could have been tourists from other countries where tipping culture could be different or not exist, Adoye said. So how much are we tipping? The average restaurant tip at Toast restaurants in the United States is 19.3% at full-service restaurants and 15.8% at quick-service restaurants. A quick-service restaurant is typically counter service or fast food, where you place your order at a counter, kiosk, or drive-through. Brian Korber, Toast Director of Brand Journalism and News, told USA Today. The data is based on aggregated card and digital tip transactions from restaurants on the Toast platform, which has about 171,000 locations in the United States. Cash tips were not included in the analysis. At full-service restaurants, tips dipped to a 7-year low of 19.1% in the second quarter of 25, and then moved up, big deal, to 19.2% through the second half. Full-service guests consistently tip several points higher than quick-service restaurants, a gap that Toast data has tracked for years, the report said. Tips at quick-service restaurants in the United States have been flat at 15.8% for 6 consecutive quarters. down from a pandemic high of 16.5%. Toast research suggests guests value personal interaction and are less inclined to tip for automated or counter service experiences, which helps explain the persistent gap between quick service restaurants and full service restaurant tip rates. The average tip for takeout service at a Toast restaurant in the United States is 13.7%. Takeout still tends to draw the lowest tips of any service model, and many guests don't tip at all, likely because there's less direct service involved than when sitting down with a server, Korber said. Aggregate tip percentages rose during the first few years of the pandemic, then began to ease in 2023 and have since stabilized, Korber said. After the pandemic run-up and the 2023 pullback, both full-service and quick-service tipping have settled into a consistent range. That's good news for servers who can count on a steadier baseline, he said. Guests tipped more during the pandemic for takeout since that was the main way people enjoyed restaurant food, and people wanted to support restaurants and their staff, Korber said. Adoy tips 15% for takeout since she wants to support the people who package the food. Adoy has tipped at some quick service restaurants mostly because she doesn't like conflict. But she understands how some people may or may not want to tip at places where you order your food at a counter. If someone asks me to my face for a tip or turns the screen and there is a tip prompt, I would say yes. But typically, at a fast food restaurant, she is not leaving a tip, Adoy said. She has had cashiers or restaurant counter workers push the skip button for tips before swinging the screen around, and she appreciates that. Ultimately, Adoy said she would rather have food servers earn good wages, not rely on tips, and have a system in place in which prices include tips. In my ideal world, I would prefer tipping to be not a thing, she said. I prefer that everyone be paid well. Well, I do not tip at takeout places. I don't see why. But anyway, here's the states that tip the most. Delaware comes in first at 22.1%, followed by West Virginia, New Hampshire, Indiana, Ohio, and Wyoming tied at fourth, Kentucky, Maine, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and Wisconsin tied at seventh, Iowa, Montana, and Rhode Island tied at 8, Michigan at 9, and Nebraska rounds out the top 10, tipping at 19.9%. And here's the states that tip the least. And we'll start with the highest of the least tippers. Utah and Arkansas tied at 18.9%, followed by Georgia. Next is New York, New Jersey, and Mississippi tied at 18.7%. At seventh, we have Texas and Hawaii tied. Next comes Louisiana, Florida, Nevada, Washington, District of Columbia, and the state that tips the least, California, at 17.3%. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 14 minutes after the hour. And here's a tragic story. $200 million fund created for Venezuela after deadly earthquakes. Acting Venezuelan President Delcy Rodriguez said an initial fund of $200 million would be created using resources from the International Monetary Fund dedicated to rebuilding infrastructure after back-to-back major earthquakes struck the country's northern coast, collapsing buildings and raising fears of widespread casualties. The two tremors, which hit less than a minute apart late Wednesday, triggered panic in the capital, Caracas, as residents fled into the streets. Early photos, videos, and reports showed significant structural damage, including collapsed apartment buildings and debris-strewn roadways. Emergency crews searched through rubble for survivors. In an appearance on state television just before 1 a.m. local time, June 25th, Rodriguez said at least 164 people were killed and nearly 1,000 injured, and noted the death toll was expected to rise significantly. The U.S. Geological Survey warned that high casualties and damage are probable and that the disaster is likely widespread. The agency said aftershocks, including some potentially with strong shaking, may follow the two earthquakes. Dozens of buildings have collapsed, Rodriguez said. La Guaira state is a true tragedy and it's become a disaster zone. La Guaira, near Caracas and home to the city's airport, has been the worst hit area, Rodriguez said. We are currently carrying out very intense rescue efforts to save as many lives as God allows us to save, Rodriguez said. From here, we send our message of solidarity, and to those families who have lost loved ones, we reaffirm our condolences and our support in these difficult hours. A tsunami threat was issued for Puerto Rico and the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, but was canceled after the danger passed. Rodriguez, who has been acting president of Venezuela since U.S. forces removed former President Maduro, said she would request money from multilateral organizations to support recovery efforts. Jeremy Lewin, who was in charge of U.S. foreign assistance, said the State Department has already mobilized a disaster assistance team and task force to deliver and coordinate critical assistance to the Venezuelan people. He said the United States would send search and rescue teams, medical and humanitarian supplies, and other resources. The two major earthquakes that just hit the great people of Venezuela are both massive in scale and have left a devastating number of deaths, President Trump said in a post on the Truth Social app. I have instructed all agencies of our government to get ready to move quickly. We will be there for our new and great friends. At about 6:04 p.m. local time on June 24th, the magnitude 7.2 shock hit about 14 miles south of Yumare, data from U.S. Geological Survey showed. Yumare is a town in Yaracuy State, about 173 miles west of Caracas. The tremor, initially reported as a magnitude 7.1, had a depth of about 12.6 miles. 39 seconds later, the USGS reported the second major earthquake, a magnitude 7.5, struck. The second quake, also centered about 14 miles southeast of Yumare, had a depth of about 6 miles. Venezuela lies in a seismically active zone where the Caribbean plate meets the South American plate, massive slabs of rock that make up the Earth's outermost shell. The USGS said the magnitude 7.5 quake occurred as a result of shallow strike slip faulting near the complex plate boundary between the Caribbean and South American plates. This event was the main shock of a severe seismic doublet sequence occurring just 39 seconds after a 7.24 shock, the agency said on its website. A doublet sequence, defined as two earthquakes of similar magnitude that occur close in time and proximity, likely indicates a complex rupture interaction process. Simon Bolivar International Airport in the city of Maiquetía near Caracas was closed until further notice because of damage. Schools will be canceled nationwide for the remainder of the week. Fire trucks were seen on the streets of Caracas, where some buildings suffered significant damage, Reuters reported. Witnesses reported feeling the ground shake in the capital. One witness said they were forced to evacuate as the earthquake shook buildings. Another reported cracks formed on the side of their building. Video footage showed emergency personnel climbing into one collapsed building as night fell. It's just devastating. I can't imagine what that must be like. 455 people charged in $6.5 billion healthcare fraud case. More than 450 people, including doctors and nurse practitioners across 45 states, have been charged in connection with global healthcare fraud schemes totaling a record $6.5 billion, the Department of Justice announced. The federal agency, in a news release on June 23rd, wrote that the alleged fraud and opioid abuse schemes involved 455 people who submitted false claims to Medicare, Medicaid, and other health care programs and caused significant patient harm, including death. Of the group charged in the schemes, prosecutors said at least 90 were doctors and other licensed medical professionals. In all, 56 federal districts and 50 state Medicaid fraud control units participated in the investigation. This year's National Healthcare Fraud Takedown represents the greatest whole-of-government effort to combat healthcare fraud in our nation's history, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said in the release. While today's announcement is one of the largest on record, every arrest is a continued message to criminal actors who rob American taxpayers that you will not get away with your crimes, FBI Director Kash Patel said. Since June 8th, hundreds of defendants have been arrested in connection with the schemes in what the DOJ is calling the 2026 National Healthcare Fraud Takedown. In one case in Arizona, Blanche said a corporate executive allegedly took $1 billion in taxpayer funds after billing for wound grafts, charging more than $1 million per patient. The money was later allegedly used to buy million-dollar homes, luxury cars, and even build a hotel in the Philippines, Blanche said. In another case in Virginia, Blanche said the co-owner of a mental health company was charged with a $49 million Medicaid fraud scheme that targeted the homeless by offering them illegal bribes in the form of hotel stays in exchange for using their Medicaid numbers to bill for crisis stabilization services that they did not need or receive. In California, charges were brought against a hospice owner and two other defendants for a $28 million Medicare fraud scheme in which the hospice owner allegedly tried to avoid detection through a plot to purchase information about deceased people from a funeral home employee. The hospice owner, prosecutors said, fraudulently enrolled patients who were not terminally ill and allegedly paid illegal kickbacks of up to $3,000 per person to a funeral home employee in exchange for dead Medicare beneficiaries' information. The owner then allegedly billed Medicare for several days of hospice services for the deceased people who had not received hospice care and created fake, backdated medical records, prosecutors said, claiming the beneficiaries had been seen by a doctor. Prosecuting criminals who steal from American patients is necessary, but stopping them before a single dollar leaves the building is smarter, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator Dr. Mehmet Oz said in the release. CMS is done playing catch-up. We are deploying advanced data analytics to expose fraud networks, freeze suspicious payments, and shut down bad actors before they can do damage to the programs that millions of Americans depend on. So I guess it's just more waste, fraud, and abuse. And we continue. Federal judge in California blocks ICE from making arrests at U.S. courthouses. A federal judge in California issued an order on June 23rd blocking the Trump administration from arresting non-American citizens at immigration courthouses and limiting how long non-citizens can be held at short-term facilities. U.S. District Judge P. Casey Pitt's order comes in response to a case brought in the Northern District of California over immigration and customs enforcement arresting non-citizens attending immigration court proceedings. The case challenges the agency's practice of holding non-citizens for sometimes days in facilities without a bed or other adequate accommodation. In a 71-page order, Pitts slammed the Trump administration policy of making arrests at immigration court as having a chilling effect that threatened to undermine the nation's immigration system. He dismissed arguments that immigrants with solid legal cases had nothing to fear from the Trump administration directive to make arrests at courthouses. The proper functioning of the immigration system depends on such non-citizens attending their scheduled removal proceedings, Pitts wrote. Thus, the chilling effect of courthouse arrest could undermine the proper enforcement of immigration laws, even if it affected only non-citizens likely to be removed at the end of the process. Immigration advocates celebrated Pitts' ruling. U.S. Representative Veronica Escobar, a Democrat from Texas, called it excellent news. Immigrants who show up to court the right way have been targeted by this administration, the El Paso area representative said in a statement. So glad to see this blatantly illegal and cruel policy struck down. But DHS General Counsel James Percival said in a statement, when a judge sentences a defendant, the defendant is taken into custody. If an alien is ordered removed by an immigration judge, the same should happen. A district court judge ordering otherwise is naked judicial activism in service of an anti-American open borders agenda. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, where the time is 27 minutes after the hour. And we move on to the USA Today opinion section for June 26th. And this is somewhat of an unusual piece, but you might find it entertaining and informative. It's written by Dace Potas. And Mr. Potas is an opinion columnist for USA Today and a graduate of DePaul University with a degree in political science. And Mr. Potas's piece comes to us under the title of Looks Maxing. That's spelled L-O-O-K-S. Maxing is the latest trap in the manosphere. Social media influencers have a simple message for young men. Your worth comes down to a few superficial things: your looks, your money, your status. And because women are shallow, or because the system is rigged against you, the only path forward is to game it. Those factors are not irrelevant. Appearance and income matter in dating and career, but they are far more from the whole picture. The manosphere has evolved since its peak with former pro kickboxer Andrew Tate, and its newer strains could be even more corrosive to young men trying to figure out who they are and what they want. Gen Z men would be wise to tune it out and return to more traditional forms of self-improvement. Even granting wrongly that young men bear no responsibility for their struggles in dating or work, you are still far better off bettering yourself than assigning blame. Struggling young men from my generation tend to look outward rather than inward. In dating, they blame their looks or women's standards. In their careers, they blame boogeyman, billionaires, immigrants, a rigged economy for their inability to get ahead. Opportunistic influencers are happy to exploit that. The Tate brothers have faded, but their brand was built on telling young men that the only way to get ahead is to embrace the superficiality of the system, or that playing by traditional rules is for suckers. It was never about helping young men improve themselves. It was about money. Now there's a newer and stranger phenomenon. Looks maxing influencer Clavicular, real name Braden Peters, takes it further. Peters follows a punishing regimen, takes illegal substances, has undergone surgery, and attempts to reshape his bone structure with a hammer, all in pursuit of physical perfection. The modern narcissist operates on a simple conviction: appearance is the most important thing about a person, and improving it by any means necessary is the key to getting ahead in every area of life. How much Peters actually believes this and how much is performance is hard to say, but in some sense, he's a victim of the ideology he now spreads. At some point, someone convinced him that his appearance was the most important thing about him. Peters is 20 now. He started his looks-maxing journey at 14, meaning he was primed to absorb these ideas at precisely the age when boys are most vulnerable to them. Now he's passing those ideas on. Older members of Generation Z, born from 1997 to 2012, largely see through it. But the youngest and most impressionable are another matter, and that's who these influencers are reaching. The drive to improve yourself is healthy, especially if you're dissatisfied with where you are in life. The problem isn't the impulse, it's the goal. If becoming more attractive is your primary aim, you probably don't have a clear picture of what's actually holding you back. For most people, looks are not the obstacle. Status is built from your career, your education, your fitness, your social skills, your character. Appearance is just one piece of that, and not the most movable one. This is the same blind spot that ran through the earlier generation of manosphere influencers, and Peters is recycling it. Even if looks and wealth really were the whole story, even if the cynics were right, acting on that belief would still be a mistake. It's an unproductive framework. Complaining that women's standards are too high or that the economy is stacked against you doesn't change either one. Improving yourself does. The traditional path isn't a consolation prize. It's just what works. Improving your fitness, your career, your education, your moral character, and your ability to connect with other people. These things will do more for your life than smashing your cheek with a hammer. The traditional path to becoming a better man is not outdated. For young men drowning in bad advice, it could be the most radical choice available. That's frightening. And now we move on to the USA Today Money section for Friday, June 26. And as is always the case, the money section on Friday is basically travel and tourism. So let's see what they have to offer today. We have a piece written by USA Today travel columnist Eve Chen. Renting an RV for trips has its pros and cons. Comfort, costs are just two things to consider. If you ask my introverted 12-year-old where she would like to go on any given day, 9 out of 10 times she'll choose to stay home. When we travel, hotels work just as well because the comfort and quiet are what count. Her extroverted big sister, on the other hand, loves being out and about, exploring new places, unruffled by noise or crowds. Usually, we try to juggle both, but we found an even better compromise on our family's first RV road trip with RV Share, which rents RVs sort of like Airbnb and Vrbo rent vacation homes. Here's what it was like and what you should know before trying an RV yourself, including how much it costs. We rented an east to west entrada from a lovely Las Vegas couple for our trip through Nevada. It was a mid-sized Class C motorhome shaped like a U-Haul with bunk space over the cab. My husband and I had previously stayed in a larger Jayco Whitehawk trailer near Yellowstone National Park, but treated that more like a base camp that we kept parked because we didn't feel comfortable towing something so large. And we still don't. The Entrada size was just right. There was that bunk bed over the cab, a queen-size bed toward the back, and a dinette in the middle that converted into a third bed. It had a well-stocked kitchen with a 3-range gas stove, a convection microwave, and a solar-powered refrigerator, which meant we never had to worry about groceries going bad. There was also a full bathroom with a separate shower, unlike some RVs whose shower and toilet share the same footprint. It was like having a house on wheels, which my 12-year-old loved because it meant there was always a place to unwind within a few steps of any activity we chose. The best part of the RV was having a base camp that went with us, instead of having to go like we usually do, with only 1 or 2 breaks back at the hotel. It was also more comfortable than traditional road trips, where my kids are usually cramped in the back seat. There was plenty of storage for our stuff, and we never felt like we were stepping on top of each other. I liked being able to get close to nature with the conveniences of home, including a bathroom for middle of the road or middle of the night potty breaks. I also appreciated being able to cook instead of eating out the whole trip. We stopped for groceries after picking up the RV in Las Vegas and made meals like breakfast tacos and fettuccine alfredo in the RV. The groceries and treats we bought along the way totaled $333 for the 4 of us for just over 5 days. That's not counting our last meal in Las Vegas after we returned the RV. And that was the only restaurant we ate at on the trip, and the dinner alone shockingly cost more than what we spent on food all week. One potential downside of RV travel is that mechanical issues can pop up unexpectedly, like with any vehicle. RV share bookings include 24/7 emergency roadside assistance through Quest. Love's Travel Stops just expanded its service offerings for RVs, including light maintenance, battery replacement, and tire replacement. Our generator stopped working after the first day of our trip, but we didn't consider it an emergency because we'd booked full hookup campsites for the entire trip, so we had power when we needed it. The RV owners, who were very responsive, also helped us troubleshoot by video call, and we eventually got the generator working again toward the end of our trip. And parking, well, that was sometimes tricky. I think I would get used to the RV's dimensions over time, but to be safe, we always looked for oversized spaces away from others. And whenever we had to back up, one of us hopped out to direct whoever was driving, even though the RV had rear view and side cameras. The worst part of the experience wasn't really the RV's fault. It was the wind, but the vehicle's less than aerodynamic design did not help. Most of our trip was through wide open desert, where gusts up to 55 miles per hour made it challenging to drive and sometimes rocked the RV when we slept at night. My husband kindly drove most of the time because the wind made me nervous. Another potential con is the cost. RVing is not cheap, but renting can be comparable to the cost of road tripping with hotel stays and dining out. Based on an analysis of more than 1 million bookings, RV Share says its average rental cost, set by owners, is just over $210 per night, with travel trailers typically costing the least and motorized Class A, B, and C RVs costing more. That nightly rate does not include a required insurance and protection package, which starts at $14 per night for some towable units. Nor does it include upfront and usage fees, like for campsite delivery, pets, cleaning, excess mileage, or excess generator use. RV Share recommends setting aside 20 to 30% of the nightly rate as a cushion for those costs. It also doesn't include fuel or campsite bookings. A roughly $90 security waiver and refundable deposit are not included either. All of that adds up to a lot more than tent camping, but it still costs less than other types of vacations my family takes, like the theme parks and on cruises. And unlike other trips that may have blurred in our memories over the years, I don't think this is one we will ever forget. My mother-in-law still talks about the time she and her family drove across the country in an RV when she was a kid. I hope my girls will talk about this trip like that someday. You are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 40 minutes after the hour. And we continue with more traveler and tourism note. Cruising altitude. Written by Zach Winter, another USA Today travel columnist. This flight cancellation cost me time, but earned me $700. Travel windfall. A canceled flight hurts, but it doesn't sting as much when you get paid almost $700 for the inconvenience. That's the situation I found myself in earlier this summer when I was flying to England to visit some family and go hiking. I had booked myself on an 8 a.m. departure from JFK Airport in New York to London, but when I woke up to catch the bus, I saw an email that my flight had been canceled and I was rebooked to travel at 6 p.m. I was annoyed. I had intentionally chosen the morning flight because it's so much better than flying transatlantic overnight, but ultimately, I didn't have a choice. Then I remembered that Europe and the United Kingdom have stronger passenger protections than the United States does. In general, in the U.S., you have absolutely no rights whatsoever to compensation, with maybe the exception of overbooking. Eric Napoli, Chief Legal Officer at AirHelp, a site that helps passengers get compensation they're entitled to, told me. In Europe, when a flight is delayed by 3 hours or more, and the cause of that delay is directly attributed to the airline, not something out of their control like really bad weather or air traffic control issues, when it's something that's their fault, the airline is obliged to pay you up to 600 euros. Because my new flight was arriving in London almost 12 hours after my originally scheduled itinerary, I was fairly certain that I'd be entitled to something. After Brexit, the United Kingdom adopted its own version of the European Union rules it previously operated under. Because I was flying on a British airline, I immediately applied for compensation and was wired the money a few days later. It nearly covered the full cost of my ticket and was so easy to apply for. I just had to fill out a form on the airline's website with my flight and bank information and upload proof of purchase for my original itinerary. One thing to keep in mind, though, the airline didn't notify me directly that I was eligible for compensation, so it was on me to find the form and fill it out myself. As summer travel picks up, it's important to know your rights if something goes wrong, no matter where you're flying or which airline you are taking. It's complicated, but U.S. travelers are more likely to be entitled to compensation for disruptions on international itineraries. If you are an American and you are flying on a U.S. airline, you are almost guaranteed to be treated better on foreign soil than you are on American soil. William McGee, Senior Fellow for Aviation and Travel at the American Economic Liberties Project, told me, the United States lags much of the world when it comes to passenger protections, and certainly lags the European Union. The EU, for example, requires airlines to pay compensation to passengers whose flights are delayed by more than 3 hours, or if a cancellation results in an arrival delay of more than 3 hours from the original booking. The exact compensation amount is also based partly on distance. Other countries with similar protections include the United Kingdom, Canada, and some Asian and Middle Eastern destinations. Websites like AirHelp can assist you in learning what you're entitled to based on your itinerary and in claiming the compensation you're owed. It can get especially confusing traveling to or from the United States because regulations vary based on the airline you're flying, as well as your departure and arrival airports. In general, U.S. airlines flying to Europe, for example, are covered under U.S. law for outbound flights, meaning passengers are only entitled to disruption compensation on flights returning from Europe to the United States. European airlines on those same routes are covered by EU law in both directions, meaning passengers will be entitled to compensation for disruptions in either direction. So, what are you entitled to for delayed or canceled flights in the U.S.? The United States does not have the same kind of passenger protections, and travelers generally are not entitled to cash compensation for delays or cancellations. However, there are some entitlements for canceled or significantly delayed flights. If your flight is canceled or your arrival is delayed by 3 hours or more for domestic itineraries or 6 hours or more for international itineraries, you could get a refund if you choose not to travel on alternative flights offered by the airline, even if you booked a non-refundable ticket. However, you would generally not be entitled to additional compensation. Compensation is something above getting your money back when you're flying, Napoli said. And according to McGee, U.S. regulations largely let airlines dictate their own compensation policies. Here in the United States, we largely allow airlines to self-police. They do so on these issues of consumer protections through the contracts of carriage, he said. The Department of Transportation outlines the basic policies in major carriers' contracts. My bottom line consumer advice is looking at the best contract of carriage and hope for the best, McGee said. So, are there any advantages to flying U.S. airlines for international trips? While U.S. airlines generally offer less robust protections for disruptions, they are often more flexible with rebooking policies than their international partners. Although I received $700 in compensation from a British airline for a flight disruption, the same airline later charged me $250 to rebook a different flight after the fare had dropped a few days after I purchased my ticket for a trip I'm taking this winter. Most U.S. airlines waived change and cancellation fees during the pandemic and now let passengers cancel tickets and rebook them when prices drop, applying the fare difference as a credit toward future flights. Similar policies are not in place at most foreign carriers, so it's hard to say with certainty which is the better option for summer travel. A lot of things can happen in the summer that can make travel difficult, Napoli said, and given the current airline regulations and policies, it's hard to protect yourself against every eventuality at once. And now, let's get up to speed on cruise ships. I don't think you could ever get me to go on a cruise ship, but it's just not something that I'm interested in. I couldn't see being stuck in a boat for 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 days with total strangers. Not for me. But anyway, for those of you who like cruises, cruise ship spas offer more help to get guests to unwind. From massages to Botox, lines add to their services. And this is written by USA Travel editor Nathan Diller. I tend to keep busy on cruises, but during a trip with Virgin Voyages, I set aside 75 minutes for dedicated relaxation. I arrived at Redemption Spa aboard Brilliant Lady in September, where my massage therapist led me to a treatment room past sleek, soft-lit spaces with porthole windows offering views of the water. Between the rocking of the waves and the warm salt stones on my back, unlike any ordinary massage I had back on land, I drifted off to sleep more than once. Afterward, I had to leave to make a dinner reservation, but there are plenty of other ways for guests to unwind, including heated marble benches, hot and cold plunges, and a mud room in its thermal suite. You literally slather mud on yourself, let the steam do its thing, then wash it all away. Nathan Rosenberg, the adults only cruise line's chief brand experience, marketing, and momentum officer, told me in an email. Cruise lines have increasingly invested in their spa offerings in recent years. What were once more modest spaces offering massages and other select services have grown into comprehensive wellness centers, offering a vast array of options for guests seeking pampering and self-care. Spas on cruise ships have completely renovated, upgraded, and gone massive, I would say, in the last decade, said Adam Duckworth, president and founder of Travelmation. Here's what to know. In case you're wondering, how have cruise line spas changed over the years? Duckworth traced the origins of modern onboard spas to the launch of Royal Caribbean's Oasis of the Seas in 2009, which was the largest cruise ship in the world at the time. It went from just a massage table or 10 massage tables and maybe mani-pedis in the spa area to basically a full-on wellness retreat, and they just kept stacking it from there, he said. Common services now include facials, acupuncture, and even Botox. I got my teeth whitened the last time I was on Celebrity, which was really fun, Duckworth added. Those facilities have become a draw of their own, according to Carolyn Rebnell, South America and cruise specialist at Audley Travel. I guess before it was, if there was a spa day, people would go to the spa, whereas now people can actually choose their cruise lines based on what facilities they might offer. That varies across cruise lines, with smaller vessels typically offering pared-back versions. However, even on an expedition cruise through Australia's remote Kimberley region I took aboard Seabourn Pursuit in 2024, there was an onboard sauna where guests could watch sandstone cliffs pass by through a large window. Cruise lines are leaning in different ways. Virgin, which launched in 2021, designed its ships and programming with wellness in mind. Rosenberg said the company never wanted it to feel like a bolt-on or some polite little corner of the ship. We wanted it embedded into the experience. That goes beyond the spa to include its food, with both lighter and more indulgent options, fitness classes like high-intensity interval training and cycling, and the Sunrise Radiance, exclusive to Brilliant Lady sessions, which incorporate stretching, breathwork, and a silent disco. Virgin takes a non-prescriptive approach, and the spa is a key component of its strategy, as the cruise line often hears from guests that they want options. Some people want recovery, Rosenberg said. Some want movement. Some want both. They might do a hard workout, grab a juice, hit the cold plunge, then spend time in the thermal suite. Others want the massage, the salt room, the blowout, the nails, and that is their version of wellness. All of that counts. MSC Cruises, which already has a robust spa program, will roll out new services at MSC Aurea Spa locations across its fleet this year. Those include IV therapy, permanent makeup, and other medical wellness treatments, a head spa inspired by traditional Japanese techniques, ear piercing, artificial intelligence-powered skin analysis, and more, according to a news release. So, are spa services included with cruise fare? Well, generally, no. Spa services are typically an extra charge, and prices vary depending on the cruise line guests are sailing with and the services they choose. My massage aboard the Brilliant Lady costs just under $300, for instance. Onboard spas are also commonly operated by third-party providers. Cruise ships often offer passes for thermal suite areas, which give guests access to amenities like plunge pools, hot and cold therapy rooms, and heated loungers. Passengers may also be able to use those facilities before or after a treatment, such as a massage. Some lines also have spa-inspired staterooms, according to Duckworth. The cruise lines have focused them on wellness and relaxation. Those include Celebrity Cruises Aqua Class cabins and SEA Thermal Suite and an exclusive dining venue called Blue Serving Clean Cuisine, along with in-room bottled water, a spa concierge, preferential rates on Aqua Class spa packages, and other perks. Duckworth said cruise lines risk losing out on market share if they don't respond to growing demand for amenities. If cruise lines are not investing in their spa and wellness areas, they are going to lose the guests who specifically want that experience. You are listening to reading of articles and features from USA Today for Friday, June 26th on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We will return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been me, Chet Walczyk. I'm glad you were able to join me. I hope you have a great summer weekend, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Nick. We begin with the sports section and 7 eye-opening numbers at halfway point of MLB season. Well, that was fast. Major League Baseball has reached the halfway point of its season. Actually not symbolic, with the All-Star game not tipping off until July 14th in Philadelphia. But by the end of June 25th, more teams will not have played 81 games, and that's all downhill until this baby wraps September 27th. Weird year, right? The league is filled with lots of bad teams and really aren't out of it. Leaving observers to ponder if any team is actually any good. Perhaps the summer months will bring clarity. Or perhaps we'll wonder why MLB will insist on a lockout for competitive balance when everyone is mid. Either way, now's a fine time to look at the many eye-opening paces that teams and players alike have set. Perhaps some of them will even hold up. But for now, math's easy. So here are 7 numbers that catch our eyes should they hold up come games 162, records and stats going into June 25th. Number 10, AL teams below 500. That's 2/3 of the American League underwater. Hashtag if the season ended today, it doesn't. The Toronto Blue Jays would claim a wild card spot with a losing record. What gives? Well, it's easy enough to look at the interleague records and realize 12 of 15 teams have losing records against the National League. The Los Angeles Angels, 9-18, and Minnesota Twins, 9-17, were the worst of the bunch, while only the Seattle Mariners, 12-11, and Texas Rangers, 16-14, were above 500. Bo Bichette, Blue Jays to New York Mets, and Alex Bergman, Red Sox to Cubs, hop leagues. While they haven't lit up the scoreboards with their new clubs, their losses are palpable for the teams they left. Tariq Skubal remains in the AL for now, and while he missed 5 weeks and his team has floundered, the Tigers are still alive, which brings us to the next point, which everyone's in it. 25 teams within 6 games of a playoff berth. From getting into playoff position. That would be the Angels, Red Sox in the AL, and Mets, Giants, and Rockies in the National League. Don't think that automatically means those teams will be sellers, though the Angels were just 6.5 games out of the playoffs. And the Mets, 8, still wonder how many teams will truly believe come August 3rd that they are good. Will the floating mass of contenders break up a bit by then? That's typically how it goes, but doesn't discount anything in this season of the meager. 0 teams on pace to lose 100. Okay, now for some good news. Nobody's objectively terrible. The Colorado Rockies lost 119 games a year ago, and they're again at the bottom of the league. But the new regime had them 32-49. And on pace to go 64-98. Progress. 218 strikeouts for Cam Schittler. That would be the most for a Yankee not named Garrett Cole since 2018, when Luis Severino punched out 220. In his first full season, Cam Schittler has pitched like an ace practically every start, more than holding it down, while Cole and lefty Carlos Rodon were on the comeback trail. While Cole has had moments of dominance in his return from Tommy John surgery, it's hard to imagine anyone unseating Schittler as the club's bona fide Game 1 playoff starter. Presuming Max Fried returns from his elbow malady, the Yankees have a potentially daunting quartet of playoff starters. 9 hits per 9 innings given up by Freddie Peralta. Pardon the escotera, but it's hard to pinpoint one number for all that's befallen the Mets. Let's go with this one, simply because it appeared baseball ops president David Stearns stole Peralta at the end of the winter from the Milwaukee Brewers, a bona fide ace ready to lend stability to a star-studded team that needed pitching. Yeah, about that. Peralta has been getting thoroughly peppered, giving up 41% more hits than last season, when he won 17 games, posted a 2.7 ERA, and finished fifth in Cy Young voting. The ERA has swelled to 4.83. His K rate has shriveled from 10.4 to 8.7 per 9 innings, and Stearns, it seems, is experiencing the business end of Brewers' devil magic he was so good at brewing up in Milwaukee. Now it's doubtful Peralta can help the Mets get back into contention. Unclear how much trade value he'll have come August, and curious what his market will look like when he finally hits free agency this winter. 220. Home runs for the White Sox. Yep, guess who's second to the Bronx Bombers in home runs? The Chicago White Sox of Colson Montgomery and Minutaka Murakami, who lead the team with 20 long balls each. Those two are tied fourth in the AL, a remarkable feat for Murakami since the Japanese rookie hasn't played since May 29th due to a hamstring injury. The White Sox are somewhat stunningly at first in the AL Central, with just 2 seasons after losing a record 121 games. It's a startling display of resolve for both team and individuals, and most notably Miguel Vargas, who has 17 homers and has doggedly continued his rise since getting traded to the sad sack 24 Sox. If they actually reach that 220 homer mark, they'll tie the 2003 White Sox for 4th most bombs in franchise history. 82 wins for the Nationals. Credit where it's due. The Washington Nationals' entirely new regime, signing virtually no free agents, traded former All-Star Mackenzie Gore to the Rangers and ran it back with a group that went 71-91 in consecutive seasons. Yet it's all working. The 33-year-old manager, a resurgent Aussie, and all-star talents like James Wood and Cy Abrams, stepping to the fore, have made what seemed like a bottom-up rebuild look less laborious and much more fun. Should they go out and get a bullpen if they hover in the playoff position? Can't hurt, considering that they were on the pace for 84 wins until lightning struck in the 9th inning on consecutive nights. And Memphis soundly aces the NBA draft. That's a wrap on the NBA draft. With its second round completed June 24th, teams can sit back and assess the additions they've made, the trades they've executed, and get to work on figuring out how to incorporate these young players. The Summer League will be a good indication of the quality of these picks. But that was widely regarded as a deep and talent-laden draft. There should be plenty of optimism around the NBA. That's why if teams didn't quite execute their vision, or if they were caught off guard by how the board settled, it could be costly. Here's some winners and losers from the draft. Winners. The Memphis Grizzlies. The Memphis Grizzlies, who may be looking to offload Ja Morant and fully commit to a youth movement, aced this draft. They found balance. Memphis got arguably the most polished hooper in the draft at number 3, Cameron Boozer, the consensus National College Basketball Player of the Year, who should shine from day one. But the Grizzlies also nabbed a promising project in Kareem Lopez, who is only 19, but his years of pro experience in the National Basketball League in Australia The masterstroke was the trade for Pistons forward Isaiah Stewart, an incredibly low value simply because Memphis took the salary of Detroit's books. Stewart is a physical defender who sets the tone, something the younger Grizzlies will need to moving forward. The Chicago Bulls. It always helps when you shoot up the draft lottery. But the Chicago Bulls rose to the occasion. Chicago did trade out both of its second-round picks, but Caleb Wilson at number 4 and Dalen Swain at number 15 are excellent fits for new Bulls coach Tiago Splitter. Wilson is a touch raw and will need to add bulk to his frame, but he boasts excellent size and length, is extremely athletic, and plays with physicality. Swain can get to the cup. Now he needs to refine his jumper. Splitter likes for his teams to run up the floor and read defenses while attacking the paint. Wilson and Swain fit that perfectly. Miami Heat. No, the Miami Heat did not have a first-round pick, but the number 13 selection they had held was centerpiece of the deal that shipped two-time NBA MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm not good with, I don't follow sports, and I'm not good with pronunciation, so if I'm butchering that, I apologize. So they need to maximize the return on their second rounder. Sensing that, the Heat aggressively moved up 4 spots from number 41 to take an NBA-ready guard, Ryan Conwell, who fits Miami perfectly. He was a senior, and his experience, which the Heat love. He's a dynamic athlete, he's a plus defender, and he helps solve a glaring roster issue, shooting. Last season at Louisville, Conwell converted 112 of 325 shots from three-point range and posted 8 games in which he drained at least 5 three-pointers. Losers, the Indiana Pacers. Some of this was out of the Indiana Pacers' control. It goes back to the lottery, when they had to see their number 5 pick conveyed to the Los Angeles Clippers as part of the Ivica Zubac trade. Assuming Tyrese Halliburton, Achilles, can return to full health, the Pacers will have a solid roster. But missing out on a high lottery pick will sting and will put pressure on Zubac to ensure it was worth it. Indiana's lone selection was an in-state fan favorite, Braden Smith from Purdue, and the Pacers had to trade into number 38 to get him. The New York Knicks. Yes, they are fresh off their first NBA title in 53 seasons, and yes, they already have a complete and balanced roster, but the New York Knicks took a calculated risk to the fur. Essentially, they did not want to go over the second salary threshold apron, so by trading out of their selections, the Knicks did so 6 times in both rounds. They were able to save a little bit of cap space, but New York also stashed away a bunch of future second-round selections. Whether this was a genuinely deep draft, one that could have injected even more talent into the roster, it could go down as something of a missed opportunity, especially since it will be tough for the Knicks to re-sign both Mitchell Robinson and Landry Shamet. The Dallas Mavericks. This was an odd draft for the Dallas Mavericks, who have undergone some significant changes over the last month and a half. Masai Ujiri is now in charge of the operation, and he deserves the benefit of the doubt. Given his track record, Dusty May is making the jump from the NCAA champion Michigan Wolverines to Mavericks head coach. Morris Johnson Jr. is a fine player and more of a defensive presence, but taking him at number 9, even though he played under May at Michigan, is a bit of a premium. Sergio Leira at number 25 is more of a project, and Toby Lawal at number 48 is a flyer of an uber-athletic wing. It's hard to see any of them making a significant impact on a roster that needs help now. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time now is 13 minutes after the hour. And we're going to move over to some golf. Wyndham Clark sounds done apologizing for winning. Wyndham Clark did not sit behind the microphone at TPC River Highlands on June 24th like a man looking for sympathy. He leaned forward, he spoke clearly, he answered directly. No verbal traffic jams, no awkward pauses, and certainly no shrinking from what happened June 21st at Shinnecock Hills, where a portion of the gallery treated his second U.S. Open victory less like history unfolding and more like an annoyance. Clark knows some people wanted Scottie Scheffler to win. He knows some people wanted to say they were at the U.S. Open when the world number 1 completed the career Grand Slam. He knows some people are still angry about last year's U.S. Open at Oakmont. But Clark knows this. He won the trophy. What made Clark's press conference ahead of this week's Travelers Championship interesting was not merely that he addressed the heckling. It was how little it seemed to bother him. What made Clark 3 days after becoming a 2-time U.S. Open champion? Clark sounded less like a player trying to repair his image, more like one who has accepted that the best rebuttal to the haters is to keep playing great golf. At the moment, that is exactly what he is doing. For the competition in this 72-man no-cut event this week on the PGA Tour, this is the dangerous version of Clark. Not the emotional, combustible one, not the guy who has to talk talk himself, into believing he belonged among the best players in the world. This version is calm, self-aware, and carrying the unmistakable posture of a man who has been through the public ringer. Come out on the other side and discover that the view is pretty good when you are holding another major trophy. Now, being a two-time major champ is, I think, a little different level than winning just one, Clark said. That was not a boast, it was a fact. It also might have been the most revealing thing he said. One major can be explained away by some people as a career week, a hot putter, a soft draw, or a brief visit from the golf gods. 2 U.S. Opens are harder to dismiss. Clark is now the 20th player in men's golf history to win 2 or more U.S. Opens. And isn't a soft player on the list. Guys like Walter Hagen, Gene Sarzan, Lee Trevino, Andy North, Payne Stewart, Lee Janzen, and most recently Bryson DeChambeau. Clark used the word validation and it fit. First U.S. Open win in 2023 at Los Angeles Country Club changed his career. This one may change how people are forced to assess him. This does not mean everyone suddenly has to like him. Clark knows that. He said, "It's not great to be disliked," which is both honest and obvious. But he did not sound consumed by it. He did not sound wounded. If anything, he sounded settled. "I'm just going to continue to be the person I am," Clark said, "because I know who I am." It would have been easier for Clark to come to the Travelers and overcorrect, to issue another apology, to smooth every edge, to be humbled and careful. Instead, he acknowledged the perception problem without surrendering to it. Clark is not pretending last year at Oakmont, where he damaged lockers in frustration, didn't happen. He's not pretending everyone has moved on. He is simply refusing to let that define him. And here's the inconvenient part for anyone still trying to cast him as golf's villain. He's playing too well to ignore. Clark arrived at TPC River Highlands with 2 wins in his last 4 starts and no finish worse than a tie for 11th in that stretch. He had been playing amazing. He said he finally started putting well after making a putter switch and the momentum is building. TPC River Highlands is a dangerous place for that kind of confidence. The course is short by modern PGA Tour standards, about 6,900 yards, generous enough to invite birdies, and tricky enough to punish sloppiness. Clark likes it. He called it one of his favorite weeks and noted this is where he made his first PGA Tour start. He also praised the Travelers Championship for the way it treats players, spouses, and caddies, which is no small thing the week after a major. A lot of players come here needing a soft landing. Clark arrived sounding like he might be looking for another runway. He laughed and brought up Happy Gilmore. Golf is cooler now. Golf is louder. Golf is attracting people who don't always arrive with the sport's library rules memorized. Clark said he thinks that is good. The answer was smart, and he leaned forward as he gave the answer. More interestingly, he sounded like a player who knows that the next chapter of his career is not going to be written by the people yelling outside the ropes. In perfect conditions, Thursday morning at TPC River Highlands, Eric Cole shot bogey-free 63. That included 5 birdies and a pitch and eagle on the par 5 13th hole to take the early lead. Among the nobles near the top of the leaderboard were Colombia's Nico Echevarria, who shot 64, an American pair of Patrick Cantley and Brandt Snedeker, who shot 65. And we move to the World Cup, which is still ongoing. Golf scorer almost lost love for soccer, then made history for South Africa. Not long ago, Filippo Mascao questioned whether he could continue playing soccer. In 2024, Mascao badly tore his hamstring at the Africa Cup of Nations while playing for South Africa. He struggled to regain his fitness and did not know whether he could continue his career after losing his passion for the game. I don't even know when it started, but lately it's like the fire in me has faded. It's fading, he wrote on social media during his recovery process. I still train like my life depends on it, but inside it feels empty. On June 24th, Maseko scored the biggest goal of his career and possibly one of the biggest goals in South Africa's soccer history. After receiving a pass from Chipang Moremi across the box, Maseko took 2 touches, one to control the ball, one to slot it past the keeper at his near post. The goal in the 63rd minute gave South Africa a lead it did not relinquish. Bafana Bafana, which the team is popularly known as, advanced to their first ever World Cup knockout stage. They will face Canada in a round 32 game on June 28th, 3 p.m. Eastern on Fox, at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. It was an emotional moment, South Africa coach Hugo Broos said. We came here to Mexico wanting to survive the group stage. When we scored, there were still 20 minutes to play. It became more and more tense until the final whistle. For Maseko, the spotlight is as hot as it can be right now. However, it was a long road for the winger. After finally making his first competitive start on February 15th this year, a span of 662 days since his last start, Maseko reflected on everything he had endured once again. I learned patience, I learned humility, I learned who I am, he wrote on social media. Last time meant more than words can explain. That perseverance helped earn a place on Bruce's squad. Although he doesn't have the glitz and glamour many expect from a winger, he delivers when his team needs him the most. Against South Korea, he did exactly that. For a player who once wondered whether his passion for the game had all but dried up, there could hardly have been a better answer than scoring in the country's biggest World Cup match in more than 2 decades. Now we're going to move back over to golf with the LGPA. Sorenstam says 5 majors needed for PGA Calendar Slam. Anika Sorenstam doesn't hesitate. 4 is not even an option, she said when asked how many majors are required to complete the LGPA's Calendar Slam. You can't win 4 and call it a Calendar Slam when the calendar has 5. This week, world number 1 Nelly Korda has the chance to become the 3rd player in LPGA history to win the first 3 majors of a season, joining Babe Zaharis, 1950, and Inbee Park, 2013. Korda all but ran away with the Chevron Championship in April, going wire to wire in Houston. She then clinched a nail-biter at Riviera Country Club earlier this month to claim her first U.S. Women's Open title and 4th career major. This week at Hazleton National, she's the clear-cut favorite of the 2016 KPMG Women's PGA's Championship, finishing tied for 3rd here in 2019 at age 20. Korda says she's not out there thinking about Grand Slams or history. I'm just out here trying to play golf for sure, she said. I have a very in-the-moment mindset this year, which I'm trying to take forward towards the end of the year. In 2013, the LPGA designed the Amundi Evian Championship as its 5th major. Korda has played her entire career with 5 different major championships on the table. They have more chances than we did, said Sorenstam, but it makes it harder to win all 5. The LPGA officially recognizes a player as having achieved the Grand Slam after winning 4 consecutive majors in a single season. A player who wins 5 majors in a single season will be acknowledged as having won the Super Grand Slam. The term Grand Slam originates from bridge, a card game in which players win tricks. When someone clears the table, they earn 13 tricks or a Grand Slam. Bridge was quite popular around the time Bobby Jones won the 4 biggest men's tournaments of his era in 1930, prompting the Atlanta Journal's O.B. Keeler to use the bridge term to famously describe Jones's improbable feat. A Grand Slam in traditional sense doesn't refer to a specific number, but rather running the table. Count Lydia Ko, winner of 3 different majors in Sorensen's camp. I think if there's 5 it is. And we're going to move over to the WNBA. Trying to make sure to cover every sport they have in here. The WNBA continues to discover, it's calling egregious fouls on WNBA's 30 poster. Continues to discover new ways to shoot itself in the foot. In the league's 30th anniversary season, and the latest self-inflicted wound is a poster celebrating that historic milestone. On the surface, it looks harmless. The poster looks like something that might hang in a 10-year-old's bedroom or a college kid's dorm. Dawn Staley's awesome teal and purple Charlotte Sting jersey pops in the middle of it. She's surrounded by a handful of recognizable faces from the past and present. Brianna Stewart, Aja Wilson, Cheryl Swoops, Lisa Leslie, Paige Buchers, and Angel Reese, to name a few. But a closer look shows a few things the NBA is guilty of far too often. Incompetence, a lack of oversight, and a void of creativity. I should note this is written by Michael Northam, who's a columnist. For starters, the poster is $30 and looks like something that could have been designed in Photoshop 15 years ago. It's simply a collection of logos and stock images of players. It seemingly wants to take inspiration from one of the throwback Sports Illustrated covers the magazine rolled out during March Madness, a Where's Waldo-style collage meant to evoke excitement for the NCAA tournament. Except there are only 20 players here. All this poster did on June 24th, when the WNBA shared it on its X account, was inspire anger, disbelief, and confusion. The post has been viewed more than 1 million times and has more than 1,000 comments. The loudest voices came from those pointing out the exclusion of Caitlin Clark, easily the most recognizable player in the league. The Indiana Fever Guard's entrance into the WNBA in 2024 brought countless new eyeballs to the sport, and in turn influenced the latest media rights deal and collective bargaining agreements. When you make a poster intended to represent the greatness of the WNBA's past and present, you include Sophie Cunningham, Marina Mabrey, and Anissa Morrow, but not Clark, the 2024 Rookie of the Year, the WNBA's single-season record holder for assists, the fastest player to reach 100 three-pointers made, and a player who just unveiled her signature shoe? How is that outrage not predictable? Who looked over that poster and gave it the green light? How nervous was the social media manager who posted it on X, knowing the WNBA's mentions were about to light up? But let's set Clark aside for a moment again. The poster says WNBA 30 on it in big bold letters. It's intended to highlight today's stars and now the players who came before them. With that in mind, the absences here are wildly egregious. The WNBA's all-time leader in assists in games, Sue Bird, not on this poster. The WNBA's all-time leading scorer, who also owns 3 championships and 6 Olympic gold medals, Diana Taurasi, not on this poster. The only player to win Rookie of the Year and MVP in the same season, Candace Parker, not on this poster. 4-time champion, 6-time All-Star and Hall of Famer Maya Moore, not on this poster. The NBA's first 50, 40, 90 player who dragged the Washington Mystics to a championship with herniated discs in their back, Elena Del Don, not on this poster. Where's Tamika Catchings, Brittany Griner, Sylvia Fowles, Cynthia Cooper, Yolanda Griffith, Lauren Jackson, and Nike Ogwumike. Again, apologize for mispronunciations. If this is the style of poster that was going to be created to commemorate the league's 30th season, why not make the tent bigger and put more players on it? Why not have 30 players for the 30th season? Why open the WNBA up for more criticism? The WNBA did not immediately respond to an inquiry from USA Today Sports asking how the players on the poster were selected. Let's assume for a moment the hurdle here is getting some of these marquee players on the poster was a licensing agreement for their likenesses. Perhaps Clark, Teresi, and others have not inked deals with Wingcraft and Fanatics, the maker of this poster. Clark, for example, is noticeably absent from the 2026 Indiana Fever calendar made by Turner Licensing. If this was the case for the WNBA with this poster, couldn't it have done something better or more unique for such a big milestone? Something that the WNBA could have done instead. Just spitballing an idea here. Take 4 players from the past and 4 from the present. For this exercise, let's pick who is actually on the poster. Dawn Staley, Lisa Leslie, Cynthia Cooper, and Therese Witherspoon. And for our legends, Paige Buchers, Angel Reese, Aja Wilson, and the Fia Coliseum for our stars of today. Put the legends on the throwback gear, Stately on her Sting jersey, Coop in the Comet's warm-up jacket, Teaspoon and Leslie donning the old looks of the Liberty and Sparks. Put the stars of today on these iconic orange WNBA hoodies that became so popular. Then hire a good photographer and assemble them the way that Slam magazine used for its draft class photo shoots. That could have been special. In the era of AI, fans could have appreciated the original artistic ability required to create such a poster. Does it solve the Clark and Taurasi problem? No. At least fans will know that actual effort was put in. That the WNBA cared enough about celebrating its 30th season to actually orchestrate and choreograph something that had potential to be memorable. All that was apparently too much work. Once again, the WNBA took a shortcut, messed up, and rightfully got dunked for it. Reminder, you're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 31 minutes after the hour. And we're going to move over to the Life section. We're going to start with the big movie of this weekend, Supergirl. Alcock's Supergirl flawed but flies right when needed. Supergirl walked into a bar and Millie Alcock came alive. Early on in the DC superhero space adventure Supergirl, in theaters today, Kara Zor-El, Alcock, stops at a cosmic tavern for her 23rd birthday and showcases all different facets of the title character in one drunken moment. There's loneliness, pain, and self-destruction in her binge drinking, humor that comes in her wild free dancing, and the reverence in hanging with her beloved super pup, Krypto. But when danger walks in, courtesy of a very large and formidable alien, Kara walks out and throws hands on the dude. In that scene, Alcock was so vulnerable and accessible, says Supergirl director Greg Gillespie. I was like, we have a star here. Alcock, 26, first introduced this version of Supergirl in the rebooted DC Universe last summer in Superman. As an inebriated Kara, I need to remember that, burst into the Fortress of Solitude and surprised her straight-laced cousin Clark Kent, a.k.a. Superman, played by David Cornswet. The Australian actress's new solo movie catches up with Supergirl on the journey of self-discovery, helping a vengeful young girl named Ruthie, played by Eve Ridley, as well as a poisoned Krypto, while also still coming to gripes with the deaths of her parents and their entire planet on Krypton. She has had influence from her family, but also influence in having to kind of reassimilate onto Earth through Clark's definition of what it means to be good. Alcock says of Kara, this film really explores the different avenues in which we can all be good and how you can be a hero along the way, in your own kind of way. Interspersed with the adventures and quite a few brawls with bad guys are flashbacks to Kara's time on Krypton and adopting Krypto. While Clark was sent to Earth as a baby before Krypton blew up, Kara and their parents were escaped with others, although only temporarily avoiding their people's fate. Kara's dad, played by David Krumholtz, sends her to Earth before it's too late to reunite her with her grown-up cousin, but their upbringings have led to different personalities. The flashbacks show where this grief is coming, where this armor is coming from, Gillespie says. Once you see that you are completely invested, and you understand her lack of being able to connect, the humor she's using as an armor, and an abrasiveness that she can have in certain moments, she's protecting herself. Kara isn't the only superhero with a tragic origin story, but unlike, see that guy who dresses as a bat and fights crimes after the death of his mom and dad, Kara hits up a dive bar and plays with her dog to cope. She isn't this complete, unattainable ideal. She's a reflection of who we are, Alcock says. We are all really beautifully flawed. So I do think that there's a lot of relatability in the way that she has dealt with trauma. As a comic book do-gooder, she's almost an anti-hero, Gillespie says of Supergirl. She doesn't want to be a superhero. It's been pushed upon her. And she's running away from it when we meet her. She's shirking all of this responsibility, and to me, that makes her incredibly fascinating. Kara's heart is in the right place. Her belief system goes back to something her mom, played by Emily Beecham, tells her. You don't have to be nice, you have to be good. Alcock loves how Supergirl explores this nuance within our moral compass and the way in which we all exist within the gray area. She says, the good people do bad things. The bad people do good things. But at the end of the day, it's what we feel is right, even if sometimes it's done in kind of an unconventional way. Audiences are longing for a really refreshing new set of ideals and identities associated with who is allowed to be a hero. Flawless people, we've seen that countless times, who can be heroes. But I think that really flawed and divisive group of people, and that really flawed and diverse groups of people, is something that could be more exciting for new audiences to see on screen. Alcock feels closer to Kara than her other roles, such as the dragon-riding young princess of House of the Dragon, or the budding socialite of Sirens. All the people that I've had the privilege to play, I've needed to play them, Alcock says. Kara is the most similar to who I am. For better or for worse, I really need to play her to believe in myself and believe that I was capable. I think ultimately everyone who you play is part of you. It's you in some beautiful facet. She says before jokingly adding, I just can't fly. Now we're going to move over to the other big movie of the weekend, Jackass. Knoxville, Steve-O, and emotional over the last Jackass. It's the end of a nauseating era. Johnny Knoxville, Steve-O, and the rest of the gang are back for one more round of outrageous stunts in Jackass Best and Last, in theaters now, which they have announced is the final movie in the franchise they began on MTV in 2000. Driving me into work on the last day of shooting, it really hit me, says Knoxville 55. And when it came time to wrap the final scene, he lost it. Usually the assistant director says, all right, that's a wrap. Knoxville says they handed me the megaphone. And let me say that I started weeping. As usual, Best and Last, the fifth Jackass film and follow-up to 2022's Jackass Forever, strings together a series of over-the-top stunts and pranks. Through this installment falls somewhere in between the sequel and the clip show. Roughly half its runtime consists of new stunts. The other half is archival material, including the best bits from earlier movies and older ones that never made it onto the show. So after 26 years, why end Jackass? It really boils down to Knoxville not being able to stand in front of bulls anymore, longtime cast member Steve-O 52 says. It's almost that simple. The turning point was a gnarly stunt on Jackass Forever when Knoxville was struck by a bull and suffered a concussion. It was a pretty intense injury which took 6-7 months to recover from, Knoxville says, and led to a brain hemorrhage and cognitive decline. I don't want to go through that again, nor put my family through that again. He says, though ending the franchise was still a difficult decision. I can't do the larger stunts anymore, and I'm still reconciling that. For the large part, that's okay. I've done enough. But part of me is still having trouble with that. It's like putting to the rest a side of you. It was time, but it's tough. In Best and Last, Knoxville largely takes a back seat and allows others to handle most of the new stunts, often serving as more of a master of ceremonies. After years of putting himself on the line, he found that challenging. I felt like half of me in this film, and I didn't like it. It's tough to sit back and host while everyone else is having fun. While Knoxville stepping back, Steve-O came into the final movie ready to be gnarlier than ever, and he doesn't disappoint. His new stunts in Best and Last include a disgusting game involving laxatives that had him violently barfing, as well as a bit in which he gets a prostate exam from a robot. Both gave him a chance to preach about prioritizing prostate health and colonoscopies, a potentially life-saving message for fans who have grown up alongside the franchise. It's also a great opportunity to frame this art in the context of middle age. He says, we're in an age where cancer screening is so important. While filming, Steve-O says he didn't have the ability to really feel sad about it being the end because I'm so grateful that we got to do it at all. Plus, he already thought Jackass Forever would be the last movie, so this installment was an unexpected bonus. But the significance of that final day on set, which also saw the last scene in the film, wasn't lost on him. That day had a heaviness, he remembers. There were a lot of tears, there were a lot of hugs, there was a lot of gratitude. The older footage featured in Best and Last includes previously cut bits considering too reckless to show back in the day, including a shocking scene of Knoxville shooting himself in the chest with a real gun while wearing a bulletproof vest. A version of the stunt in which he tested self-defense equipment on himself appeared in the first episode of the MTV show. I didn't realize I just changed my life, Knoxville says, noting there's a part of the footage where you can see him realizing he was onto something with the idea that led to Jackass. That moment touches me. That's just one of numerous Jackass stunts that could have easily had fatal consequences if all didn't go according to plan. In another older bit of Best and Last, the police officer pulls a gun on Knoxville while he's pretending to be an escaped prisoner at a hardware store. The cop later told him she was prepared to put a bullet in my ear if he had moved an inch. We have been very lucky, he acknowledges. Knoxville went through the myriad of emotions revisiting the franchise's highlights for the film, including scenes with Jackass cast member Ryan Dunn, who died in a car crash in 2011. Sometimes you'll watch it and you're just in awe of how funny and at the same time sweet he was and hilariously grumpy he was, Knoxville says. And then you miss him, and that hurts you right in the face and in the heart. For Steve-O, looking back through the series' best moments made him reflect on one of its core appeals. Despite how inappropriate and vile Jackass has always been as a franchise built around a group of friends making one another laugh, it's also surprisingly wholesome. There's nothing hateful, he says. There's nothing mean-spirited, and I think that's why it's aged so well, and why it endured for as long as it did. And the big movie of last weekend was Toy Story 5, and they have this is a spoiler. It includes details about the ending of Toy Story 5. It's now in theaters. Toy Story 5 takes on the screen time issue. The age of toys may be over, but the relevance of Toy Story hasn't waned a bit. And it's touching on a topic parents all over the world are still trying to figure out. Disney and Pixar's iconic franchise was began all the way back in 1995 with the first movie about a cowboy rag doll, and his astronaut action figure frenemy was back in theaters this month with Toy Story 5. The new installment features the iconic talking toys, only this time they have a new enemy, the iPad. Well, of course, the film never uses the Apple-branded word, but the plot of Toy follows Jessie, played by Joan Cusack, favorite bedroom toy of 8-year-old Bonnie, played by Scarlett Spears, who is horrified when Bonnie starts spending all of her time on a kid-friendly tablet called LilyPad, played by Greta Lee. Jessie soon discovers, with the help of old pals Woody, Tom Hanks, and Buzz, Tim Allen, that kids all over the world are entranced by the lure of devices and tech. They are no longer playing with toys. This kicks off a war between Jessie and Lily, as Jessie tries to get rid of the tablet and help shy Bonnie make new friends. It's almost inevitable that Toy Story story in 2026 will include the insidious creep of personal devices and screen time into the lives of our children. As the parent of a 4-year-old, I'd spend days and nights sweating over whether I'm allowing my child to watch too much TV, if I'm on my own phone in front of her too much, and worrying about when and how she'll get a smartphone. I'm not the only one. Parents have long debated the right use of screens for kids, from the effects of idiot box cartoons in the 1980s to the rise of video games in the 90s to tablet kids in the past decade and a half. This is not limited to screen time at home. Parents, educators, pediatricians, and legislatures all over the country and world are expressing concern about one-to-one device usage in schools. The question of whether or not it's okay to give your 8-year-old a tablet is extremely fraught and relevant. In the context of the movie, the discussion of screens and tech is surprisingly nuanced, perhaps slightly too nuanced for the younger audience members to understand. Jessie, Woody, and Buzz originally reject Lily and their ilk. In totality, champions as they are of the imaginative play kids get to enjoy with their regular old toys. However, in a detour to the house of another child, Jessie meets Smarty Pants, voiced by Conan O'Brien, a low-tech potty training toy/game that's seen as something of a gateway drug to the world of screens. He and his other gadgets, a digital camera and GPS device, slowly endear themselves to Jessie as they are too are just looking for a kid they love. Lilypad also redeems herself by the end of the movie. In addition to turning Bonnie into a zombie playing mindless touchscreen games, Lily helps Bonnie join group chats with other kids, meaning the once isolated child is no longer out of the loop with the cool kids. As Lily tells the rest of the toys, this is how kids make friends in our current day and age. The mention of group chats is sure to strike fear in the hearts of parents everywhere, a special subset of screen time fears. Parents who delay giving their kids devices risk having them left out of these crucial chats, where so much of social interaction, particularly among preteens and teens, happens. But those chats are also rife with bullying and inappropriate content, completely unmonitored and unregulated. They create major problems for families and schools to the point where punitive action must be taken. The American Academy of Pediatrics even has official guidance for group chats. Parents are just trying to do what's best in the most difficult society and culture for parenting has ever existed. Baby boomers never had to worry that their children would be exposed to online pornography or that their images would be used for deepfakes and sextortion. They never had to navigate social dynamics on 10 different platforms, from Roblox to social media to 20 different group chats. And the pressure to fit in is not just for kids. If every parent in the class has let their kid have a tablet and you haven't, maybe you're doing something wrong. In Toy Story, Bonnie's parents think they're doing something to help Bonnie by buying her a tablet. She struggles socially, and they realize all the kids are socializing online. When Bonnie seems more and more depressed by what's happening on her tablet, they try to limit her. When she's bullied, they are there for her. It felt deeply for them. Even though they are such a small presence in the film, I too want to do everything right for my kid. And there's no one to tell me what the right answers are. By the end of the film, Lilypad has become just one more toy in Bonnie's bedroom, playing music at pretend weddings and being used to snap selfies for Bonnie and her best friend Blaze, voiced by Michelle Harris. Lily even makes the self-sacrificial move at the film's climax to temporarily leave Bonnie, fearing that she's made things worse for the young girl. That all makes sense from a storytelling perspective. Villains learn and grow and realize that the heroes are right all along. It also subtly suggests the big tent is on Bonnie's side. That a device is morally neutral and only bad if the parents or children want to use it badly. I don't want my kids to think that any screen is their friend. When Woody says Lily is one of us, she's fundamentally wrong. No matter how responsibly parents think screens can be used for young kids, nothing changes. The fact that they are addictive slot machines that have been proven by research to harm children. As one 2023 study plainly states, too much time spent in front of a screen and multitasking with other media has been related to worse executive functioning and academic performance. But the thing is, keeping kids off screens entirely isn't really the goal of Toy Story 5. Kids' movies can have sweet messages and helpful morals, but they are inevitably consumer products designed to make money, and not just on ticket sales. Disney is a business, after all. Leapfrog Toys have already released an official licensed tablet-style Lilypad, devices for age 3 to 5, for only $27.97 at Walmart. The description says your preschooler can stay connected with Jessie, Buzz, Woody, and the Tech Trio by texting them using emojis and preset messages. In a world run by big tech companies increasingly targeting our children's time and attention, neither cowgirl rag dolls nor parents feel like they have much of a chance. A reminder, you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time now is 49 minutes after the hour. We're just going to cover a little about books. I might just read the titles and pick and choose a few to give descriptions for based on time. 15 new titles we recommend reading. What better way to beat the heat than to step into a far-off fictional world? We're approaching the summer days when it's too hot to do anything, so you might want to stock your shelves with stories to pass the time in the air conditioning. I know I'll be spending the summer haunting my local park with a picnic blanket, a hammock, and a good book. Whatever you're in the mood for this summer, USA Today has you covered. Want to try a new genre or see what all the hype is about? Check out our Lit RPG Starter Guide. Or take a break from reality with our escapist book recommendations. And don't forget to bookmark our summer book challenge for a chance to win a $100 gift card to bookshop.org. So here are their 15 choices, from true crime to juicy memoirs to romances with yearning turned all the way up. There's something here for everyone on this list. Here are 15 books that came out this spring that USA Today recommends. London Falling by Patrick Radden Keefe. Utterly unputdownable. Keefe's London Falling investigates the mysterious death of Zach Bretler, a 19-year-old who fell to his death in the River Thames in 2019. But his family looks into his death. They discover he's been posing as the son of Russian oligarchs who have fallen into some shady businessmen. Radio Reading is currently recording this. Into the Blue by Emma Brody. Into the Blue is intoxicating and heart-wrenching romance. Packed with tension, it follows AJ and Noah, who drift in and out of each other's lives over more than a decade as co-workers, acting partners, and stars of a cult classic sci-fi reboot, and maybe even soulmates. The Children by Melissa Elbert. The novel is based on the two main characters of her best-selling novel and her two children, but the real childhood is far from the glistening fantasy world the world remembers them in. Now adult to the strain, the siblings battle perception, reality, legacy, and plenty of ghosts. Read this with a chill down your spine. It's like the haunting of Hill House tinged with an eerie fairy tale. Girls Girl by Sony Feldman. Seek the Traitor's Son by Veronica Roth. Fame Sick by Lena Dunham. Dunham draws a compelling line between the toil of illness and celebrity in this new memoir. Fame Sick chronicles the highs and lows of Dunham's time in the spotlight, including filming Girls and the diagnosis, hospitals, and the addiction she was dealing with behind the scenes. John of John by Douglas Stewart is a beautifully moving coming of age for both the father and his son about the secrets we keep from and for the people we love the most. It follows a young art school graduate who moves back to his Scottish island hometown, now claustrophobic and full of duty, expectations, and meddling neighbors. Score by Kennedy Ryan. The Midnight Train by Matt Haig. If you love The Midnight Library, you're sure to enjoy his next book. The Midnight Train opens as 81-year-old Wilbur is dying and given the opportunity to revisit his happiest days and biggest regrets on a magical time-traveling last chance adventure. Waiting on a Friend by Natalie Adler, both historical fiction and a ghost story about grief. Waiting on a Friend is set in 1980s New York City during the height of HIV/AIDS epidemic. Renata can see ghosts, but her best friend Mark is the one person she longs to see again, and the only deceased loved one who won't return to her. Boring Asian Female by Kanwin Zhu. Mother Tongue by Sarah Novick. The Paris Match by Kate Claiborne. In this romance novel, physician Layla must confront her ex at a destination wedding for her sister. She's trying to be on her best behavior, but soon finds herself at the center of tensions. And doubts, and the best man determined to make sure everything goes according to plan. Japanese Gothic by Kylie Baker. Two people in different centuries find a portal connecting them. In 2026, Lee Turner flees New York for Japan after discovering he's killed his roommate and can't remember how or why. In 1877, exiled Samurai Sen sees a mysterious young man outside her window. And Night Objects by Eli Raphael. After a family tragedy, a 15-year-old is sent to an elite boarding school where secret societies rule, and the murder investigation is about to upend everything she thought she knew. And we're going to read a little bit from the Lifeline, just to finish things up. How was your day? Rosenbaum and Krakow. One calls the Heart stars Aaron Krakow and Ben Rosenbaum are especially a family of three. The Hallmark actors told People magazine that Krakow 41 gave birth to their first child, a daughter, in April. Our daughter has been the greatest gift. We are loving getting to know her better with each passing day. Krakow and Rosenbaum, 39, told the outlet, adding that being parents together has only deepened our partnership. The news comes a year after the duo announced they had tied the knot. Rosenbaum plays Mike Hackham in One Calls the Heart, while Krakow plays protagonist Elizabeth Thatcher. And a few birthdays today. Guitarist Mick Jones from The Clash is 71. Singer Chris Isaak is 70. Singer Patti Smith is 69. Filmmaker Paul Thomas Anderson is 56. Actor Sean Hayes is 56. Chris O'Donnell is 56. Actor Nick Offerman is also 56. Singer Gretchen Wilson is 53. And singer Ariana Grande is 33. You've been listening to a reading of the USA Today for today, June 26, 2026. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Nick. Thank you. Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 9 of To Rescue the American Spirit by Bret Baier. Following that, at 3 o'clock is New York Magazine, and at 4 o'clock, a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us.
Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a